Okay, so what's really going on here by the Conservatives? What do you think?
Look, in their wildest hopes, Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives would love to see the government actually collapse and have a fall election. That's not really what they think is going to happen next week, and that's not necessarily even their primary intention. Their primary intention with this motion, Todd, is to force the NDP and the Bloc to side with the government. Pierre Poilievre wants to show the country that the NDP and the Bloc are still preserving and upholding and sustaining the Trudeau government. They want them to wear that. The Conservatives want the NDP and the Bloc to wear that. They think that's an investment in their change message for the next election. So that's what this is really about. And we're going to get probably a week of histrionics and parliamentary tactics in and around that drama.
Well, that never happens in Ottawa, does it?
Well, it's going to happen a whole hell of a lot more now that we are back in a pure and true minority situation.
Yeah, let me ask you about the path forward for Trudeau here. So you're saying we may see this non-confidence motion next week, the first of a number of ones that are going to play out over the fall. If you're Justin Trudeau there, what's going through your mind, Scott, after what happened in Toronto and then Montreal on Monday?
Well, it's a challenging time, obviously, and I mean, what's going to have to happen from this point forward is they have to play every count carefully. They have to calculate where everyone is, how they're managing committees. This puts all sorts of pressure on the House leader and on the team that guides the legislative agenda. But for Trudeau himself, for him personally, as he faces the country, faces these by-election defeats, faces very low polling numbers, what he's really going to be managing, I think, and one of the challenges for him is he's going to try and pronounce next week that this means he's had a vote of confidence, that it has carried, and it's time to put aside these parliamentary games. He'll make that minority prime minister argument. Once he's survived a vote of confidence, he'll say, let's get back to doing the business of the people, okay? We've settled this political partisan question. Let's have a respite for a period of time. Let's not relive this every 3-4 weeks. That's in his personal political interest, but that's a message that might have some appeal to certain voters who say, God, are we going to be plunged in this drama every time? So for Pierre Poilievre, he's also going to have to figure out how often he wants to go to this let's force an election well.
What about the Bloc Quebecois? They have already said, look, we're not going to support a non-confidence motion by the Conservatives if it's about a carbon tax, election or a carbon tax issue. What does that mean? They're another wild card in all this.
Well, they are for rent. They are in no rush to have an election. They love the position they're in now. They won a by-election the other night. That adds a member to their caucus. They don't want to have to deal with a majority conservative government if that's how the next election would turn out. They like this position that they're in right now. So they're going to be highly motivated to preserve the parliament that they're in, but they have to still reserve, the threat that they may yank the chain. That's the way they get proceeds and results out of the Trudeau government. It's going to be interesting to watch. I mean, part of the art of this, not the science, part of the art of these minority parliament shenanigans, Todd, becomes who goes first? Which of the parties that might preserve the government and protect them from an election gets out ahead and says, you know what, let's just settle the drama. We are siding with the government. Is it the NDP? Is it the Bloc? Do they ask for something or do they not? Do they get something? I mean, again, another rich opportunity for Pierre Poilievre is to point at deals that get cut in order to preserve the Trudeau government. Oh my God, look at the Liberals. They're now working with the separatist Bloc in order to give them spoils to save their own skin. So he'll play that out, and that's a really important tactical decision for both the NDP and the Bloc. How and when they ask for a lot to keep Trudeau alive.
Yeah, in bed with the separatists, so to speak. That doesn't go over well with a lot of Canadians. Can I ask you one last question, which is, whether the Bloc or the NDP have any interest, have any money, polling, whatever, that would, want them to have an election now? Because my understanding is the answer is no.
The answer is no. And I mean, let's focus particularly on Jagmeet Singh. I mean, he pulled the trigger on this and ended the confidence and supply agreement with the government and then spoke in the most strident of terms. This is a government that doesn't deserve another chance. I'll have nothing to do with them. They'll always bend to the powers of corruption and greed. Well, you speak in such definitive terms about your opponent. How do you then rationalize, but I'm going to keep them in government for another year? The truth of the matter is he needs the government in place for another year because in order for this separation from the government strategy to work for the NDP, he needs time for Canadians to see him standing apart from the government, which ironically requires him to support the government on confidence votes. Again, that's what Pierre Poilievre wants to put on the magnifying glass and say, look, this is all a trick. They're trying to pass an illusion here. So the NDP, it's very, very, very tricky. They're going to have to find just the right balance to strike. But the truth is this. They don't want an election now because the only party that's polling worse than the Liberals, the New Democrats.
Scott Reid with his take, our political commentator here at CTV. Good to see you, Scott, as always. Thanks for this in the meantime.
Thanks, Todd. See you soon.